Could you could you just do a thumbs up if you can hear me, right? Yeah, perfect. I'm gonna share my screen. First of all, thanks for inviting me. I thought it was very interesting to hear the experiences from your work, Matti. I'm going to bring a little bit of a different. It's not different, but it's well, it's a little more of an insight into our experiences on one site in Denmark. My husband and I have a small agroforestry site of 4 hectares that we call Myhrris or Myhrris, and it's all based on our love for this particular plant, Myhrris odorata, that I think I might have a small picture of later on. We're based in the warm south compared to many of the rest of you, but we're actually in considering our location, we're a bit in a cold pocket. So our small farm does experience some cold snaps, especially beginning May, where we usually see the last frost around 7th or 8th of May, and we had the first frost just last week, 3 nights in a row, and tonight is definitely going to be another cold spell here. So despite of our southern location, then it's we have some challenges when it comes to the late, especially the early flowering plants in the spring, but also the ripening and maturing of seed crops in the fall. So I've called it here experiences from Myhrris Agroforestry, and I realize that many of you have been to our place. It's a little site where we experiment with trees in the landscape. You could say it is an agroforestry, so in Danish that would be skovlandbrug. So it is somewhat of a commercial production we have. It's not for self-sufficiency entirely. It's with a business in mind. So we live off these 4 hectares that you see right here. We have designed the 4 hectares based on what should we say, an analysis of both soil types and the topography. Well, many of you are from very hilly or mountainous areas. This is, of course, a little bit funny when you talk in Danish conditions, but what you see right here with the cursor, with the cursor is that we have tree lines in the landscape following the contour. So this line right here is pretty much on the contour line. It's all designed via key line design in order to maximize the use of the water that falls. We are on a location that, unfortunately, like many of the rest of you, suffers from spring drought, which is a bit of an issue when you grow plants, because everything wants to grow in spring. Yeah, so how do we keep the rain that does fall in the landscape instead of falling down this hill here? And that's simply done by putting in tree rows with long, deep, permanent root systems so that the water never leaves and causes erosion, but rather stays in place. Let's see. So looking at our site with north upwards, we have to the north a Nord orchard with a nursery tree production. So this nut orchard, is consisting of primarily walnuts and chestnuts, so all nuts for human consumption. And then we have fruit alleys with different kinds of production in between, in kind of the center of the whole thing. And those fruit alleys have either vegetables in between them, or they have berry rows. So we have 2 alleys, 3 alleys now, I think it is, with the different berries. And then we also have grazing systems. So our farm is very much integrating animals in keeping it at the successional state that we think is preferable for our production overall. To the south, we have a chestnut savanna. So chestnuts laid out in a kind of grid system with grazing below with primarily ruminants and geese. We also have a hazel grove with grazing in between. It's mostly chickens that now forage in there. So that's the overall layout of our relatively small farm here. So the reason for having this is definitely education. We have a lot of tours where a lot of people coming to see how you can grow annuals with or around trees. And it's also an example of something that could be upscaled if one were so inclined. So it's a small-scale agroforestry that could, if one was a grain producer or legume producer or another large-scale annual producer, could have the trees in the landscape as well. We experiment with agroecological practices. So a lot of different things are going on, including, for example, our no-till grain field that's down the low area. But maybe the most interesting tonight is our breeding and development of new well-adapted species or varieties. And it is not just the nuts that I mentioned before, but also our fruit trees. And then with like our main focus is perennial vegetables. We live in a climate that favors perennials. And so from the very beginning of our project here, we've put pretty much all of our effort into investigating what kind of perennials can we grow that can either complement, supplement, or even replace some of the annuals that we also heavily dependent on, simply because our conditions favor perennials. It is like you all know it, perennials do live from year to year, so there's a lot less work in keeping them as long as they're well established from the beginning with the right conditions. So we really enjoy that work because as we're of course growing a lot of known annuals, we see that our perennials can actually enter the food chain, if I may call it that, in a very interesting way. And I'll get back to that, how that works. Yeah, so let's dive into specifically our some of our experiences here. So the whole thing, like if we just now you've seen a little bit of a map of the whole place. Pretty much, I think it's 98% of all of our plants are grown from seeds. So normally when establishing an agroforestry site, you would probably go out and buy known varieties, so known tree varieties, known fruit and nut varieties, so that you know exactly the size of the fruit, you know exactly when to harvest. You know, you have all the details down about what it is you're about to grow. We've turned it around and said we want to have a site where we develop, find out through trial and error, plants that can adapt to our site through generations, and so everything is grown from seed, with a few exceptions. But that'll be walnuts, chestnuts, perennial vegetables that we'll get back to, and even our berry bushes, aronia, honeyberries, you name it. It's pretty much all from seed. We see a huge value in it, and also a very, very big annual resilience, because we have such an unpredictable climate, and it's probably not going to get any better, I assume. It's extremely interesting to see how some years, some varieties or some and it's not even ready yet, but some individuals are taking some conditions better than others, and the next year will be other individual plants that that are favored, or that are growing better, that are more resistant to some insect or drought or severe rain, etc. So we see, by having a lot of different plants that are individually genetically quite diverse, that we also see that they can handle and tolerate changing conditions. So we've selected different perennial vegetables for written here, larger scale production. This is of course a little bit funny, because what is larger? But we're past what we would call a garden scale. So this is more area grown for these selected species than a normal family would need for self-sufficiency. So we have a sale out of the house, kind of like we have customers that buy and bring these plants with them. And a short list of these selected perennials are plants such as the Good King Henry, which we now grow on a little more than 250 square meters. Good King Henry I'll get back to. I'll also get back to perennial kale. Those are the two most prominent species that we very much see a future commercial value in. It's also plants such as perennial leek, it's Patience stock, it's Turkish rocket, sweet Sicily. Sweet Sicily was the one I mentioned in the very beginning, the plant that gave name to our business, Myhrris Agroforestry. And that one is the one that I'm sitting here in the middle of the picture here working on. Whoops. Sorry about that. It's Sweet Sicily is a very good example of a perennial plant that is extremely tolerant in various conditions. So this plant, like many of the others here on the list, germinate in March, beginning April, with the most wonderful shoots that have a slight anise flavor, a very sweet flavor. The shoots, leaves, stem, flower buds, flowers, and seeds, including the roots, actually, are all edible. And on top of that, then the flowers attract a wide range of pollinators and beneficial insects. This plant is harvestable from March until about October, maybe even November, depending on how cold it gets. And the interesting thing, not just with growing it and having it from year to year in the very same bed, is, as you see here on this picture, that the plant is grown right up next to fruit trees. So there's no bare soil around any of these trees whatsoever. All the space around the trees is covered by perennial vegetables, enjoying all the sun available to them before the trees leaf out in late April or May, and also thriving totally fine during summer when the trees are fully leaved, because all of these plants, with a few exceptions, such as some of the onions, are very shade tolerant. So they are really nice to grow together with trees, and at the same time they don't compete for either nutrients or water resources in the soil, because they have such different root systems and very different growth cycles in general. So Sweet Sicily is by far one of our most favorite plants, but also a plant that might not be for larger scale. Yeah. So one more little thing about us saying about that one is that the reason why we can grow it so closely to fruit trees such as apples is that we simply mow it down before apple harvest, and the plant can it's totally fine with food, with the traffic around the apple trees when harvesting the apples. So it's quite an amazing plant to have for a number of reasons. All right. So let's dive into this little fella. The perennial kale is one of our amazing projects that I just love. It's been going for uh, probably 16 or 17 years now. In the beginning, we started collecting seeds from perennial kale that should not be. Well, some of you in the north of Sweden and Norway probably won't be able to grow this one because it's too cold. It is marginal even here in Denmark. It comes originally from Western Europe along the coastline. Now and then it's been seen in Denmark, and it's a kale, grønkål, that has all the original traits of the now commercially grown biannual kale. So this plant has the not just biannual traits; it's actually completely perennial, meaning that it lives at least 5, 6, 7, if not 8 years. And we collected in seeds from different locations a long time ago and started breeding all these plants, crossing them, and came up during the first years with some beautiful individuals that were able uh, to survive our relatively mild yet somewhat cold and very windy winters. And those plants, of course, were the ones to breed on. So we've collected seeds from those individuals, and they have then become the ancestors, the genetic pool of origin for the ongoing project year to year. Just an example of the variety. You can see Tycho is holding it here in his hands to the right. We have some that are very curly, like the known kale that you can find in supermarkets today, that's commercially grown. And then we have some that are with a much broader, flat leaf surface, and some that even have the more purple veins. And those are, of course, very ornamental and can be, well, they're just beautiful. So the eye is also satisfied when looking at those. um, so how do we select them? Every year we analyze how the plant is growing, how it's affected by both both butterflies, the caterpillars seem to just like sometimes there's some individuals that get completely eaten down, and other years we hardly see a caterpillar at all on the perennial kale. We basically value or how should we say it? We identify each individual plant's pluses and minuses, pros and cons, and then we decide whether that plant should be allowed to flower. Because if it's allowed to flower, well, then it'll of course cross genes, mix genes with neighboring individuals. And so it's an interesting work to judge each plant. How are you doing? How was winter? How was spring? Uh, how is the plant doing overall? We get some quite interesting, unique plants with some funny characteristics. The one here in the main picture is one of those that we really like to breed on, because you can see while it's flowering, it's putting out new vegetative growth. And this is a very good sign of being able to make the next winter, because the plant here, even though it's spending a lot of energy on flowering and setting seed, is also spending energy on photosynthesizing and hence producing enough sugars in the root and therefore being able to make the next winter. We have some plants that are on the right here that are good for maybe restaurant sale or for commercial production, because they have a lot of small leaves coming up the stem. Some of them are almost like trees, like trunks. So it's the diversity is quite wide. Those individuals that we like a lot become then varieties, you could say. So those are then cloned, in that we take cuttings, and that's what you see in the middle here. Tycho's just planted out some new cuttings in a row, and those plants are then becoming the next generation, as well as seeds from the selected individuals. So we have both clonal division, vegetative division of those individuals that we like a lot, that we see a future in, and then we have all the seed propagation as well. And then this is a miserable picture of a winter day to the up in the top right corner here. But that's also what the plants should be able to tolerate. If they can't live through a Danish winter, then there's no reason to go on with the work, and then that individual is out. Now this looks like all these plants are dead. They're not. Kale can take a fair bit of frost and will just come back again as soon as the frost has left. So I started out saying this thing about introducing perennials. We have a market garden with the subscribers that come and harvest themselves. So on top of selling seeds through our web shop and selling vegetables to restaurants and events, we also have private customers who come through our UPIC subscription model. And what you see here in the market garden, which is a no-till system, so all the beds are permanent and are never tilled. So it's it's that kind of system where we just add compost to each bed every year. This bed here on the left is perennial kale, and we've now introduced many of our perennials to our normal customers by growing them in beds that they come and harvest from. And this means that we get an idea of what people like to harvest from, like the different colors that people like to harvest from, different sizes of leaves, different curliness, etc. But it's also the other way around, that people get to eat something that may not necessarily look exactly how it looks in the supermarket. So that's back to our educational purpose. We want to educate people in eating what is able to grow here and what we can ourselves get seeds from, and so, but therefore thereby not be dependent on seed companies elsewhere in the world. That said, we still buy in seeds for many of our crops, simply because we can't manage all of it on our side by ourselves, and some seeds are just easier to buy. All right, another plant that I want to touch upon is this one, Good King Henry. Is Bletum bonus indicus, is one of the plants that we just grow from seed every year without doing any selection on. And I'm bringing it on here because this is one of the perennial plants that is an amazing, also very climate tolerant. This plant grows the most amazing leaf matter and seeds, regardless of how the summer weather is. So whether it's drought, whether it's cold and rainy, it doesn't matter. This plant will always succeed and always give us a good harvest. Good King Henry was in a 4-year project that I was the lead of, a part of, where we experimented and sent some leaves. So this is all results from leaves to some laboratory tests. We were lucky to get funding for having some of them tested. And what we found was that this plant has quite a potential, not just because it's climate adapted, but also because the content of different minerals and vitamins is quite striking. It is really a wonder plant, and also a very good plant in that it, like, the leaves can be used as spinach, and the seeds are excellent, like quinoa. So market-wise, it's actually a plant that would be very easy to introduce to the market. But a plant that we don't have to do any selection on, because it is so well adapted already. So there's no breeding necessary unless you want it to compete with quinoa in its seed production, of course. All right, we're moving on to fruit and nuts from seeds. This is not something that I will recommend to everybody to do because it takes a long time. Or does it? Well, when planting a seed, an apple seed in the ground, you have no idea what the result will be. Our experience is now that out of our approximately 200 apple trees from seed, about a third of them are just inedible. You can't eat them. They are not even good enough for cider. It's not worth the trouble. The next third, so about 33%, would be those that you can eat on the spot, that are okay, especially okay because it's your own apple tree, so you accept it. Now, the remaining third, 1/3 of our apple trees actually show amazing traits and have what we believe market potential, and that's not bad. Like 33% of the apple seeds that we put in the ground are actually turning into varieties that we think and believe have a future. So yeah, so those trees that we really, or individuals that we find have a future, we then do clonal divisions from, so vegetative division, and they become hopefully known varieties that will be totally adapted to current pests, current climate conditions, and are all selected in that we don't accept any kind of disease. So if a tree shows any kind of disease, then like blight, then it's out, or rust, then it's out. It's not just apples that we do this with. We also have peaches and even apricots. The apricots are not doing that well, but the peaches are actually doing rather well. And then we also do a plant like Cornus mass, which I believe Danes, Norwegians, and Swedes need to get to know. This little plant, it's a small tree, you could say. It's the one here in the middle. Have amazing fruits that are known in the East, known in Eastern Europe and the Caucasus. It's well adapted to our climate and is a good example of plants that we focus on because of our changing climate out there. So yeah, I want to stop my little session here with this sentence. I think it's very important to know for everybody that in each little seed lies a unique adaptation to current conditions and also future conditions. And if we limit seed propagation and plants' ability to express themselves to whatever condition they've faced, then I'm not sure I want to be a part of what we eat in the future. Yeah, so that was it. Tack.
Thank you very much. We are a little bit behind schedule, so just one simple question, or not maybe so simple, but chestnuts from seeds.